What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is SAP's Global Senior Vice President, Tony Pante. Tony has 25 years of experience in the software and technology industries and has spent 15 of those years at SAP. Tony played college football and he is currently applying the lessons he learned on the gridiron, leading SAP's brand new customer success organization focused on helping customers drive value from their cloud solutions. Grab your pen and get ready to take notes on the bonus resource available in the show notes because you are getting ready to learn from a Harvard Business School grad who was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from his inside sales professional peers.
To get things moving is the hardest thing. There are going to be a ton of roadblocks. It's going to stop in the mass and velocity. It's going to slow it down. There's a ton of friction. As a leader, how do you make sure you're creating the momentum, get the ball moving, or get a first win of something, pick it back up again, put the guardrails around where you want to go, and then make sure the momentum's going, and then get out of the way. Get started, celebrate the win, and that builds it and builds it and builds it.
Tony, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Don. Really excited for the opportunity to spend some time with you today.
You know, I know we both share a love of John Maxwell, specifically his 21 Laws of Leadership. You've said that one of your favorites is the law of connection. The stronger the relationship and the connection between individuals, the more likely the follower will want to help the leader do great things. One of the challenges in that, especially when you're looking at 100,000 people, is helping your team know who to be connected with and who to ask.
It's a really, really good question. You never know when you're going to need help and support to support a customer or to work through an issue. The odds are within SAP and the 100,000 people, making sure that you are connected to people, you're intentionally helping them. There's the answer. And the only way to get things done is through a network of people trying to figure out that connection and network of how to find it. We use the law of connection as a big principle, a combination of the connection and making sure that you understand who you need to be connected with. And I mirror that with the law of addition, connection and addition and connection and addition, and using those tools as a way to build your network to help support customers, to help support any issue. The majority of what my team does has always been virtually, whether it be MS Teams or Zoom or some sort of collaboration platform. So we're inherent digitally to connecting, but it requires you to manage it. I'll talk to my leaders. We say, hey, where are we in terms of driving a program? Who are the people involved? How well are you connected to those people? High, medium, low. Keep it simple. How do you intentionally develop the connections that you need to develop? Could be as simple as an email conversation, introduce yourself. Better with if you can send out an invite to have a conversation for 15, 20 minutes. And then we do try to mirror it when I had a leadership meeting a couple months back where I was able to get all of my global leaders together, first time in like 3 years. We had done enough virtually to understand each other and spend time to do that, that when we got together, we just used the first part of that time. It's like, holy cow, you're taller than I thought, or you look different than I thought. It really helped us supplement that.
Right.
And then coming out of that, now the virtual relationships are stronger. You have to manage it. You need to figure out who the most influential people are. We can help you. Our leadership team can help you, but just manage it as a program of your connections of people. Be intentional with how you engage and watch how that grows week in and week out. We did a quick little study. The ones that are really good performers as leaders, their network is massive and their connection to people is massive. The ones that struggle a little bit, they're trying to solve the problems themselves. Hey, man, build that network. Hey, how can I help you? I can make the introduction. And as you foster that, it connects and it connects more and it connects more and then it expands.
Part of that law is that followers don't move in action if they don't feel emotionally connected to a leader. What are some of the ways that you've been able to establish that emotional connection as we're moving into this kind of new world?
I'm about 100 days into a new leadership position with an existing team that I had and a new organization. So the organization's doubled, and there's a lot of new people that I'm just starting to get to know. I really try to get at the personal level, share a bit about me, my family, my beliefs, and my values. And I really try to get an understanding of each of the different folks. Spending that time in a first conversation, they may seem a little nervous on the first call, expecting it's going to be a business review. And I'm like, I just want to get to know who you are. Tell me about your family. Tell me. And I always ask, and I've taken this one from John, what are you reading?
Mm.
It catches people off a little bit. And then when you get into that conversation, you're starting to develop that rapport and you're starting to develop what motivates that person. What do they value? Over time, you're building those connections of people. And then if you come back to being human and come back to personal stories, I do a leadership meeting every Monday. And I always talk about a weekend experience with either my boys or my wife or the dogs or a drink that we had or food that we had. And there's a theme.
Wow, I like that.
That's the first 5 minutes. I do that on purpose because then it gets people started. And all of a sudden, I've got a group of people sharing pictures about what they did on the weekend to drive those connections. It's inherent in yourself to make sure you care from a human perspective. If you set that kind of environment up, it's fascinating to see what happens. People really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And they want to be connected to you,
Yep.
but it has to start with you. That's one of the great challenges. Many leaders are waiting for others to try to establish connection with them. You have to make the first outreach.
You have to make the outreach and you have to set the environment for folks to feel comfortable. It absolutely comes back to psychological safety and feeling like they're part of something. This is a fairly new organization over the last couple of years that I've been able to build and lead, and we look for common values. There is a foodie. It's funny. We play off the food. I literally got an email last night from one of my leaders who's in Argentina. He sent me a picture of a really cool steak and wine that he had with the team. You see the happiness and you see the joy of getting together and collaborating and talking, but it's a common theme. It does tie to connection in addition, but this whole concept of working as a team, it's lonely by yourself. And as you meet people and you have common ideas, that network continues to grow. It's fascinating to see how much together you can do.
Tony, I know that an important theme for you has been the phrase servant leadership, bringing out the best in people. What do leaders often misunderstand around servant leadership?
Particularly the newer leaders, they get into a position and it's like others helping them. I'm the leader, you're going to help. Oh, great. I got all these people to help me.
You're going to serve me.
Yeah. It's the complete opposite.
Right.
I've had these conversations. It's like, stop. Think about how you can help your team because you can do more with others. And if you work and focus on that versus them doing things for you, oh my gosh, I got so much to do. How can I help this person, this person, this person? Hang on a second. You do have a lot to do, but think of how much you can get done if you've got an aligned organization that wants to help and they're helping each other and you build and foster that. Start to work through that misconception, take that intentional mindset to serve others. How do you help others? That's really where the power comes. The connection piece and then serving others. We do those two things. Connecting and adding value, connecting and adding value, you're going to build trust and do other things. We've got so much. There's this transformation word. Everything's changing. We're moving fast. And I said, guys, I don't know where we're going to go. We've got a high level vision, but I don't know what's going to come ahead of us given all the growth. But I do know if we bring a strong leadership team together and we build the right environment to create and work together, we'll solve any problem. So I'm focusing on that versus the different constraints or other things that may be coming our way.
Yeah. We see it in sports. Great leaders who understand that you draw others to you when you offer to serve them. You grew up playing football.
Yeah.
What role did competition play in your childhood, and how did being a competitor help turn you into a leader?
My parents were always super supportive, always there for me, any event, anytime. My mother, father, and Dominic, my grandfather. So I had a personal goal of continuing to just get better because I saw a lot of folks that had a ton of talent and I had some, but not enough. But no one was going to outwork me. And that was always something that was instilled by my father and grandfather, is the hard work. And then that led to being able to not maniacally compete where it's all about the win, 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 but how do you get better and assessing yourself as bringing competition to yourself. That always drove me. I always wanted to get better, work harder. And as I worked harder, I saw the results of some of that hard work. I look at my family with 2 boys and wife. We don't compete internally, but we kind of do. Like, who wants the biggest pizza and who wants so it's always something around a competition that we're going to do. Then when I watch them and they go out and do their thing, they're working hard. It's that concept of hard work. You want to compete to be the best that you can be individually, but doing it in a fair way.
Yeah.
That's been fun to see as they grow up. It's super competitive now, whether it's getting into school or it's all over the place. It's about getting better, not necessarily about trying to dominate. It helped ingrain in me to get better. And I'm trying to do the same thing with the kids and with my team. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to help our customers. Why are we competing with ourselves? Let's figure out together what we can do and help our customers, because we got enough competition out there that sure as heck is focused in on us.
Already trying to make it difficult.
Exactly. Why do we have to make it difficult? And they're like, oh, you're right. Ties to the being an athlete, make sure you're getting better and you're seeing your teams getting better. And that does have a competitive element to it.
We often think of competitiveness as me versus you. One of the things that I loved in your answer was sometimes the most important place to compete is me versus me.
Sure.
How do I measure myself and how do I make sure I'm on a track to get better? Because I can be a better contributor at anything I do if I'm committed, not so much to beating you, but to just being a better me. Very wooden like there.
Who's the hardest to get motivated? It's yourself, because once you get going, the odds are it's going to keep going and building that momentum.
So Lafayette College in Pennsylvania is in the history books because one of the greatest players in Leopard program history, George Barclay, invented the helmet. Yeah. Not Alabama, not LSU. Now, you played college football there for 2 years, wearing jersey number 91.
Yes.
Seen some good pictures. What's your most memorable moment from that time?
As a freshman showing up, didn't know anybody. All of a sudden you meet 21 people in your freshman class, and then you're meeting the whole class, and then you're going through those 2-a-days. Whoa, there's a lot of work. It's a lot of activity, but you get that bond because you're all going through that. And then, oh, by the way, you start school. And I was an engineer, and I'm like, holy cow, I've got school, I've got this. And it's like, how do you do it all? You do it with a bond of people. It's that brotherhood of working hard to get better through the good and the bad. And then as you go through it, and another week goes by, and another week goes by, and you're like, holy cow, we're working together through this. Funny, at the end of workout, we'd get a little can of Coke. We'd be at the workout facility and we'd come in and everybody had a small little bottle of Coke. There was a little celebration as we got on the bus back to campus. Holy cow, I remember those little cans of Coke. It was just a bonding moment of everybody together. Hey, you finished practice. We're going to take you to training table. Here's some Coke. And oh, by the way, now you got to go to the library for 4 hours because you got the homework to do.
How do you play that into your leadership at SAP? I mean, what kind of bonding opportunities or exercises? Obviously, you're not running them through the paces and giving them little bottles of Coke.
Yeah.
What's the equivalent in some of the things that you're doing right now?
It starts with what we talked about earlier, is connecting and making sure that people feel that you're committed to their growth and development, and they feel they're committed to something as a team beyond themselves. We built a brand new organization, no idea where it was going to go. And we work together to design a strategy and move forward. But then there's moments where you've achieved a deliverable for a customer. It's taken the moment to recognize that one thing, not necessarily a can of Coke, but hey, this successful customer sent a thank you. I capture those and I share them with the entire organization. This is the impact that you've had on a customer. It feels like it keeps the momentum going. We're going through some challenging times as an organization, where we're trying to grow revenue, we're trying to grow margin, we're trying to change. There's a lot of stuff. We're still within an inflationary pandemic. There's a lot of stuff outside of what we're doing. So sometimes it's just coming together and celebrating that win and another win, and then it keeps the momentum going.
I'm assuming you have let it filter down, because not all those emails end up in your inbox. You want those opportunities to celebrate everyone when those moments come along. So your team is feeding them to you.
Absolutely.
And you have to let them know that this is part of your leadership style, that you're going to lean in to make sure that people get celebrated.
Absolutely. Part of it we put as a KPI for the team. True transparency. I said, hey, I'm going to capture customer stories every quarter. You're not going to like it at first because it's a little bit of work, but then quarter after quarter. And what I did is let me show you the email that I'm going to set up into our president, into our board area with your story. Keep that going. And you have to bring visibility to it. We celebrate some each quarter. I get quite a few and I pick a couple and we celebrate them on as we start a quarterly call. I had a review with my leader. I had a certain template that I had to use. They said for summarizing the business results. And I took a snapshot of 4 customer stories and I moved it right up front. Team, this is what I'm going to start with. Well, but you changed the template. Yeah. Read these 4 customer stories. And I paused. One was from Johnson and one was from Larissa and one was from, and it was thank you for being there to support us. It was my little way to show, hey, this is what my team is doing to help our customers. Okay, now I'll talk about the business review. You have to live it. I share that with my team to say, hey, it is our lifeblood. I want more examples of how we're helping our customers because that's why we exist as an organization. If customers aren't using our product to drive business value, they could easily go someplace else in the cloud. It's that easy to move. So if we're not helping them, what are we doing?
I had a business leader at the end of a speech a couple of months ago ask me, well, gosh, how do you know if they want to be celebrated? Are they breathing?
Yeah.
There's your answer. People want to be celebrated. It is just a natural part of our human condition. If we're working together and you're showing appreciation by, in some small way, celebrating something that we've done together or that I've done, maybe at the end of the day, yes, I will bring you a little more energy the next day. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's funny, some that you don't pick, they're like, well, hey, I had a good story. You're right.
If they're competing to get picked, that means they're generating a lot of good stories.
Exactly right. There's the competition piece to then say, hey, if I have my team competing for the best customer success story on how we've helped the customer, I just got to get out of the way.
I love it. Team competing for the best customer success story.
I didn't even think about that. And you see the parallels, sports and work, particularly at SAP. We've got a ton of athletes, and it's a very intense environment, super wicked, talented people. Definitely some of the best talent I've ever worked with across the board, every market. I've been there 15 years. It's just cool to see. It's almost like my son getting ready to go to his scrimmage for football game. We know we got the end of quarter. We got 5 weeks to go, and we got to help customers. Let's go. And as I think about all of my different leaders, they're all different types of athletes. Some may have been on the handball team, some are a bicyclist, some are skiers, but there is that element of sport and competition in probably every single one of them.
And appreciation of the opportunity to compete and the opportunity to finish. You know, a lot of athletes push themselves beyond their personal limits because there's someone out there who's inspired them. They're doing it for a family member. They're doing it for maybe someone they've encountered or a make-a-wish child, whatever it might be. It's that person that actually gets their juices going and they're going to do a little extra because they want to make sure that person knows something good has been done on their behalf. Was there someone along your journey that you found yourself really trying to always make sure you were representing proudly?
Representing proudly. I love the way that you just phrased that. There's 2. I talked a little bit about them earlier. My father was at every sporting event from Pop Warner to high school to college. He was a businessman and he sacrificed some business opportunity to be at every game. And he brought this little Italian guy with him, Dominic, who was my grandfather, every game. Every single one, yeah, they were there in the stands. I could always see where they were because I always knew where they were. And that was huge. You take it for granted when you're going through it, just to be proud, to represent, to show that I appreciated. And I tried to say as much as I could. I would always come over. We're a big hugging Italian family. No matter if you were dirty after a game, it was always the big hug. Say, hey, thank you for being there. And that's, I try to do, as I think about how I'm growing as a father, I try to do the same with my son now, my younger guy. Fortunately, knock on wood, I'm able to make as many of his games. And the same thing for my older son, being present, being there for him.
That's so awesome. Little Dominic.
With Dominic.
I love it. I think one of the great overused words in corporate lexicon is teams. Me and my team. Truth is, if you really dig in and start understanding the dynamic of the organization, it's a bunch of people who happen to have the same business card, but they're all acting as independent contractors. They all work together. They're a team because somebody calls them that. You've been around teams, you've experienced them, you've built them. If you're counseling a young leader, someone trying to grow some of what you've built, what's a great starting point to start pulling that individual group of contributors together to build them into what you would proudly call a team?
Mm, mm. A common purpose. What are you trying to do? Even if you just have that common understanding. And if you ask, hey, what are we trying to do?
Often leaders know it, but the further down you go into the organization, the less likely they are to be able to answer that question.
Or they're different things. And you're like, whoa, what are we trying to do? How are we going to get there? Who's going to do what? That accountability component is important. It can't all just be rosy. This is great. And we're grand and you get nothing done. Hey, there's some business objectives that need to improve. Let's make sure we have visibility of that and accountability of that. You absolutely have to have a common understanding of how do we want to operate. So the value thing is important, particularly when you're virtual, particularly when you're global, particularly when you have different cultures. Holy cow, you got to be aligned on a couple things that you're consistent. And they don't have to all be the same, but you have to have some level of consistency, the purpose, the accountability, and the values. If you don't have those three, it's individuals. It is individuals, and you're doing different things, or you'll be dysfunctional, or you'll slow down. It does fall apart.
Yeah.
I was the first one in the organization 3.5 years ago. One of our presidents approached me and said, hey, we got many, many, many customers that we're not helping, and we need to do it at scale. I know how to do it with the big customers, but I don't know how to do it at scale. You've got experience in doing that. Come join my organization and figure out how to do that. Sounds like a pretty good challenge. Employee number one. I had to put a vision of a little bit of data to figure out how many customers, where are they, what could we do? I had the ability to hire a couple people that I had worked with in the past that I trusted. I go, look, I don't know where this is going, but we got a ton of customers we need to engage with. And we got to set the strategy and figure out how to do it. What do you think? And I had built enough of relationships with a couple of key people that they came on board. We started to define our strategy. We started to get some activity going. And I said a simple thing to folks. I go, look, we know a set of customers. Let's just talk to the customers. Let's pick up the phone and talk to them and see how they're doing. What bad thing could happen? We haven't been talking. And that started us off with engaging. And they were like, okay, how do we do this to more products and to more solutions? And it grew and it grew and it grew. In doing that, we looked at common values of people about resilience, about creativity, thinking out of the box, about committed to helping customers, and then how can we scale it? And then we started to add more people in different areas. And those are the common values that we had. We started to measure our impact. So it got to accountability. A couple of years into this, it's a customer success practice. So our whole vision is to provide amazing experiences at scale that drive customer outcomes. Now we're engaging with thousands of customers, helping orchestrate the great best practices that SAP has that customers didn't know about. We're just talking to them in simple terms, get them to know best practice by industry, community of people to help them, and be there to help.
Wow. That is so powerful. Over the years studying leadership, one of the things that I found is that curiosity is the most significant trait of great leaders. We call it the CQ. Everybody's got the EQ and the IQ. What's your curiosity quotient? How willing are you just to keep asking questions? The beauty of curiosity is that if you possess and express it, it signals to others that you don't have all the answers and you have the self-confidence to go and search.
Hmm.
Really powerful leadership trait. How do you maintain your willingness to learn, especially as you continue to climb the corporate ladder?
It's just always been ingrained educationally as an engineer, and then through business school of asking questions and getting data together. But things change so fast now. The way our strategy is changing, the impact we're having on customers. I mean, we literally support every industry across the world.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, there's so much change going on. If you think you know all the answers, then I don't even know how you operate. I've always been that way. And I've always tried to say, look, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to ask a ton of questions. You have to be passionate about that discovery process. I've had examples where folks, yeah, they knew all the answers. Yeah. Okay. No, you don't. I have a ton of leaders right now that ask some great questions. We actually trained a lot of our leadership team around coaching and asking great questions. So that level of curiosity and then listening. this whole inquisitiveness, humble, because in that is being humble,
Sure.
saying, hey, I don't know the answer, but I tell you what, I'm going to figure it out.
When you're looking to hire for that, you're interviewing me for a job and you're trying to figure out whether I possess that skill. What kind of question might you ask me?
Give me an example of a really challenging problem that you had to solve, either yourself or as a team. Talk me through how you did it. You'll find some people, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. I'm like, okay, great, you did it. Some would say, hey, I wanted to bound the problem and define it the right way. So I asked a couple questions and I asked a couple questions. And then you kind of get into that. Is it me solving it or am I doing it with others? Another interesting thing with SAP, we've got so much talent. Sometimes people don't want to admit that they don't know because that could be perceived as a sign of weakness.
Right. It's career altering.
Yeah, fine. I get it. If you're supposed to present your business review with a board member and you don't know, that's probably not where you want to go. But you go in with a couple set of questions and you keep trying to iterate on that and look for people. Even if you go through a brainstorming session, we're doing a lot with some cool products. We're using this product called Mural to brainstorm about something where you can get everybody's ideas and then bring it together. Some people are really, really good at that. Those are the folks I want to help solve things. And some have different skills that we could put into different areas. But if we're trying to crowdsource a problem, you want to get the ones that may be a little bit more curious and ask some really good questions. Every year, there's going to be new challenges that we're going to face. So you have to go in with a mindset of what can I learn? What do I know? Who can help me? That fosters that problem solving value.
It is a value if you can bring it into an organization. I know you've played enough in the world of sports. You've certainly worked long enough in business to have seen momentum play a part in how a team or a company gets on a roll and starts to dominate an opponent. I've been fascinated by this subject for several years, that a moment can actually extend itself, create momentum. Have you ever experienced or felt its impact positively or negatively in something that you've worked on?
Oh, yeah, 100%. To get things moving is the hardest thing. The problem could be if you get moving in the wrong direction, then the momentum takes you in the wrong direction. I've seen that happen many, many, many times. If you can get the ball moving or get a program started or get a first win of something, pick it back up again. So you look for the win that gets you going again. Because there are going to be a ton of roadblocks. It's going to stop in the mass and velocity. It's going to slow it down. There's a ton of friction. You got to work through it, look for the victories. We talked about this as a team the other days. How do we get a multiplier or divider as a leader? How do you make sure you're creating the momentum? Put the guardrails around where you want to go, and then make sure the momentum's going, and then get out of the way. That's the hard part, because sometimes you're like, whoa, you're in the way and you slow things down. How do you just get started? Get started, celebrate the win, and that builds it and builds it and builds it.
It is. If you can turn that moment into 2 and 3, pretty soon sheer laws of physics start to come to work for you
Yeah.
from a psychological standpoint, right? You begin to believe that good things are destined, good things are coming.
Yeah. And then you can't just assume that it's going to keep going. Once you get it started, you got to keep fueling it because the friction will slow it down. Guaranteed to slow down your momentum all the time. It could be a corporate policy, it could be a team player, it could be a government action, it could be a competitor, but there's always inertia to slow you down. As you progress as a leader, how do you keep that momentum going?
So I know when you train leaders, you like to put real life case studies in your training because you think that makes it so much more applicable when the listener is hearing you teach. What advice would you give to leaders who want to do the same?
We had a really cool experience with 21 Laws and some of the Maxwell principles many, many years ago. And we're trying to introduce it into a sales organization like SAP. We took some of the words and we just put it in SAP isms, if you will.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like, okay, connection was build your network. Of course I got to build my network. Well, let's talk about building your network. Then we used examples about building pipeline. We did some, hey, I need to influence. Well, I don't manage anybody. So who do I? Well, hang on a second. You're going to influence your customer, are you not? Oh, yeah. Or you're an individual contributor. Yeah, but you're going to have to influence a partner and your customer, right? Oh, yeah. A partner of mine, Sean Robertson, had a really instrumental in doing this. Let's put it in words that people will understand. Use examples that you can understand from your industry. It doesn't have to be 100 of them. You just get started with a few. Then you just reinforce it and say, how does it apply for me in my situation? The individual contributor one to me is we started training leaders. That was great. But then everybody's a leader because everybody has to influence. But the minute we said, hey, you got to influence that customer because you're trying to get them to do something that they don't even know who you are. So why don't you start being connected, adding value to them, building trust, and then see what happens. And now it's kind of funny. We've come back to just, well, it's the law process.
The law of the lid.
Law of lid. Yeah. I was talking last night with one of my Asian leaders in China. He's like, I'm going to do the law of connection. We were talking about connection as I was prepping to this. And he's using those terms. He's like, okay, I got to connect and talk with this person and this person and this person. And I gave him a homework assignment. I go, as you talk to those people, just thank them. And he sent one of our other leaders a thank you note. That leader said to me, he's like, see, these guys are listening. So it gets into a vernacular that you can use to help drive change.
Totally does. You're a student of and a teacher of leadership. Yes, engineering and all these other things have played into who you are, but you're a student of and a teacher of leadership. You and your wife have two sons. What lessons and stories have you shared with them as they begin their own leadership journey?
Hmm. This is a great question because we were going through a bit of a transformation in our family. My older son, Nicholas, just started his freshman year in the business school at the University of Miami. We just dropped him off last week. So he's at the U. And, we talked through the list. He's like, Papa P's list. I gave him a set of just a couple things as we wrote letters to him as he left. We talked about just appreciate the learning environment. You're in a whole new environment now. You can be who you want to be who you are. And we absolutely talk about faith every week. Make sure to get to church, do your homework. It's principles like that. We're in his tree. He's like, I get it. You talk to us about it all the time. So I text him, how's it going? Stay ahead of the curve. Make sure that you're making a big start. Build that momentum. My rising senior, Matthew, he's got another year of football, and then he's going to play at Cornell next year. Sharp kid, working hard. He said this in an interview as I was with him. No one's ever going to outwork me. Right? I'm like, wow. With him, it's talking about keep working hard because you set the example. I was sitting watching practice last night, and one of the freshman parents came up to me and said, I just want to let you know that your son, number 71, really had an impact on my son the other day as a freshman. He just wanted to make sure he was doing okay and tapped him on the shoulder and make sure he was doing okay. And I said that to Matt. I go, Matt, you're leading by example.
Right.
That's a big opportunity. I drive them nuts with leadership. But it's cool when they play it back to you. I'm like, okay, they are listening.
My kids are tired of hearing me talk about all these same things as well.
They always laugh. Here comes the lesson again.
Here it comes. Oh my gosh. Well, I hear it too. Tony, so many lessons today. I've just scribbled all over everything I have. And as the father of a son on the autism spectrum, I love SAP. I love what you all have done into that world and community for years. And I'm a huge fan of the organization, greater fan today of yours. I cannot thank you enough for joining us and being a corporate competitor.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. Always great to talk with some amazing people. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Tony was gold. There was so much there that he was sharing about how he takes the ideas, the lessons that he's learned, and actually puts them into play. Right from the very beginning of his discussion about his Monday morning meetings, using that first 5 minutes of those meetings, not to jump right in and start talking about product or other issues. He uses it as a tone setting period to talk about something that's happened either in his life, maybe something that's come up on a plate that someone can share a picture for. That tone setting at the beginning of the meeting allows others to create that place of psychological safety, that space where you can connect with each other. And then once you start connecting and adding value, you build trust. Once you build trust, the multiplier effect of everything you're going to do becomes so much more evident. I also loved his entire discussion around how he makes a point of gathering customer success stories, and he wants everyone in his team to share with him so that he can both spread them wide within his team, but then share them upwards so that those who lead his organization know what those within his team are doing to improve the outcome of customers. In fact, the longer you do that, pretty soon what you start to see is that they're competing to have their story told, and good things happen when a competition for positive news is out there and people are fighting to get their story told. Before we end this episode, I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Lamont Hall. Lamont is an engineer in Arkansas at the utilities company Entergy, and he left a review of our podcast that said, quote, "I see the role as a leader in a greater light since subscribing to your podcast. I loved your question about the difference between a collection of individuals and a team so much that I wrote my own answer, inspired by my great-grandmother, and shared it with my team." Lamont, that's awesome. And I love that you are sharing what you're learning to equip others. And podcast listeners, we will continue to highlight you on the show. So if this conversation with Tony has helped you grow, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Have a great week. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.